Let's go beyond the connection. Welcome to our podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we've got a really interesting guest with Jim Grassman. Now, Jim, you are the VP of Technology for a company called Homes for Heroes, which I want to hear a little bit more about because I think it's just phenomenal. But you've got a really interesting background that you're going to bring to our conversation here today. And the conversation is all about the vision of the future of tech and how your point of view is it's simple, it's secure, it's stable. We don't want to make too much out of something that can be very complex. And that actually ties into your background. A lot of people probably don't know that you are actually a trained attorney and you're actually a part of the bar in the state of Minnesota. Yet here you are, the VP of Technology. So I'm going to let you explain a little bit about that, but how that helps you look for things, not necessarily from a tech perspective only, but from a business perspective as well. So if you wouldn't mind just explaining a little bit more about your background before we get started.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. I'm an inactive member, but a member of the Minnesota State Bar. And the training that you get in law school is fairly compelling when you're looking at complex technology challenges. What you learn, among other things, in law school is to really break things down into as many simple elements as you can, and then apply the rule against it, do your analysis, and come to your conclusion. While I was in law school in Minnesota at William Mitchell, I was working at a place called West Publishing, which is now Thomson Reuters, and got involved in research and development and using some of the online technology solutions that West had made available to really improve legal research. And this was, I hate to say that, but before the internet was a commercial entity. And so we're using at least phone lines and things of that nature, but it gave me an opportunity. I stayed with the company after I graduated and passed the bar and got into research and development and really bridging into what opportunities does the internet provide a company like West Publishing. And it really started my journey as being more of a business person that is working 100% in technology. So really every role I've had since then is I've thought of myself more as a business technologist that's working in technology, that's trying to solve business problems with the opportunities that applications, internet, cloud, whatever you want to call it, provides.
Jim, that's great. Thank you. I want to get into some of that kind of business technology perspective here. And I want to start out and just ask you a very broad question, but a very important question on, from your point of view, what are the biggest challenges in scaling tech, especially as you're scaling it to solve these business challenges?
I think you get over your skis a little bit. You try and find the silver bullet solution, try and roll it out too quickly, or you fall for a sales hook. You think you hear something, you can bring this into your environment. It's going to solve this problem or that problem. And in my current role, one of the things I came on board in May of this year, and one of the things that I noticed is we have this technology horizon, hundreds of different applications that had been brought in by different groups through the best of intentions. They have a business challenge and they see that there's a piece of software or a technology and application that might be able to solve that. And so contracts signed, it's brought in, and we use about 10 to 20% of it. And it's yet another software license that we have on this growing horizon. What we're trying to do now is let's shrink that horizon and let's build a stack around, in our instance, this will probably be as native Salesforce as we can get and really allow us to exploit fewer things and get expert in what we have versus looking for that easy solution. Understand the business requirements, see what we have in-house already that can satisfy at least 80% of that need versus just continuing to add and expand that horizon. Like I say, then you get over your skis. You've got a lot to maintain. You have a lot to manage. Which email tool do we want to do to send out these 500 emails that we have to send out in the next day? We've got one area that wants to use this and another area that wants to do that. And as it can integrate with Salesforce type of thing, it's just really understanding tools in the toolbox and not going out and buying more.
We all have the issue with our networks too, that you said hundreds of applications. So cloud-based applications are here to stay. Now, the bloat that you're talking about is a significant challenge. But even if you took those hundreds down to the 20% that we really need, you still have a complex problem sometimes in supporting those applications across the network. And I think you're a virtual organization. So nobody's in-house And so you have a distributed workforce. And so you're trying to connect these cloud applications over a large multi-location environment. What are your biggest challenges when you think about that network and setting that network up for success?
We're 100% virtual, which means everyone is working from their home or where they happen to be on that day, meaning their bandwidth, their connectivity to the web, to the internet is going to basically be how well they can perform that day. So if you're having latency issues, if you're having bandwidth issues, if you're having trouble accessing something, that can really slow you down. And I think anyone that has had issues with their performance with their ISP, your speed test, they tell you're getting a certain amount of bandwidth. And you're like, I don't think I am. That's a daily challenge that we face. And my mantra or our mantra at Homes for Heroes is simple, secure, and scalable. So when you start getting to that secure bit and you start looking at, okay, we need to have a VPN solution because we don't know if folks are at home accessing or if they happen to be in a coffee shop or they're in a hotel. We want to have that VPN and to make sure we have as much security as possible. And that's another constraint on your bandwidth and the performance of your video conference meeting like we're having right now. So that's been a big challenge, looking at trying to balance the sophistication of some of the functionality and features that you can get in a tool. At the same time, making sure it's not going to slow you down and you really need to be able to have solid connectivity.
So I love the simple, secure, and scalable. You talked a lot about the secure there. Talk to us about the simple and scalable. Like, what are the priorities there? And how do you create this network and this infrastructure that's both simple and scalable when there's all kinds of technology development? There's that application bloat. There's always things that are pulling you away, I'm sure, from the simple and scalable. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that the simple I touched on a little bit. It's get rid of the horizon and put some sort of native stack and really understand how that works and exploit it. Get past chapter 2 of that book and really read to the end so you really become expert in that. Find right vendor partners that have that expertise as well. We're a smaller company. And when you're using like Salesforce, that has a lot of integrations with a lot of different applications. And it has a lot of products that they're rolling out. Maybe they're not all ready for prime time, despite all the promises and things that are made from a marketing standpoint. We can't be going out and trying to find employee after employee who can provide deep architectural reviews or deep engineering experience or administrative types of things. So we try and keep our employees in the technology group focused on understanding how to use these from a business sense and then leverage vendor partners who have a much deeper bench than we do. And I have a deep expertise in a lot of these products. So I guess in a nutshell, let's try and shrink all these different products and applications that we brought in, focus on fewer, and then really understand how they work. And then from the scalable part, our goal is to be 100% cloud-based by 2027. And what I like about cloud is a lot of the sophistication that you might need in order to run a network or some hosting that you're doing for specific applications. You're really turning over a lot of that maintenance, upkeep, upgrades to whomever you've agreed to partner with. At the same time, your growth is simply added subscriptions to whatever cloud-based service or services that you have. So it's a good insurance. If we're going to grow, we're adding subscriptions. We can build that into our costs more simply and quickly. We can quickly ramp up. We don't have to go out and find employees that have certain skill sets. We don't have to be spinning up our own servers and making sure the security packing is in place. We're not acquiring things on a one-off basis like you used to do years ago. Instead, your growth model from a strategic standpoint is to have infrastructure that can grow as you grow immediately, not having to build it as you go along. And similarly, if you go through a rough patch or the market takes a downturn, you just ratchet that down a little bit. You're not having to impact employees as like in the past. And you see that happen even today with a lot of larger layoffs that unfortunately are occurring at different times.
You've had a number of important things in there, but two in particular I want to try to pull out. You said in a smaller sized organization, and you're not a startup, but you're not an enterprise. That's the bulk of the market. And you said it's hard for any of us on the team to be the experts in everything that's going on and all the new technologies and the trends that are happening in the marketplace. So you have to rely on a vendor partner to help make those recommendations make sense of where the industry is going. And so that's my first question, is that to me implies a service component to those relationships that are really important. And so if you could articulate what you look for in terms of that service component for these vendor partners, what's important to you?
Relationship is huge. I think that's always a key, regardless if you're looking for a partner. You want to make sure that you have a trust that goes beyond, we have an agreement, we've done an RFP. It's, do you get along with one another? And the trust factor, I'm a huge proponent of checking references, having deeper conversations with the people that you're getting. There's a reference from that particular company. What was it like working with them? What happened when you had an issue? How was that dealt with? Being a lawyer, I've always thought if you're going to the contract, you've lost. Doesn't matter who's going to win. And ultimately is if you're having to look at a contract to figure out how to get out of a situation or an issue, you've lost, and you've lost the relationship. When you enter into these agreements because you're looking for expertise that you don't have and you can't afford to acquire, you really need to have an understanding that we're not really sure where we're going to go. We might be wasting some of our time, and you just go from there. You have something I need and I have something that you want, money or pay or whatever, but I'm looking for situations where we can grow together and we can trust one another. And I don't know everything about what I'm asking their expertise to solve, and they certainly don't know everything about my company either. And that takes a lot of time. So it's a knowledge transfer, and that's always an important component when you're entering into a new relationship. It's like, how are we going to handle that knowledge transfer, that KT? Are we going to be charged for all of it? Or is there a free basis there? And that really shows your willingness to grow with you and partner with you over the long term.
Thank you for that. The second part of what you had said previously that I wanted to come back to was that beyond the service component, there's the lack of complexity, the simplicity here. And you had said something about, we don't know exactly where we're going, or if we have to dial back, we need to be able to do that simply. This idea of plug and play technology that allows you to easily integrate it into your network, but also easily scale or scale back at the same time. Does that really exist? Is that technology, that kind of a partner out there? And if so, tell us a little bit about that.
I would agree with you. No, it doesn't. But first, I go to the 80-20 rule. Can it get us 80% of what we want? And then if we get 80% of what we want, you decide if the other 20% is worth going after, because that's where a lot of the cost is. I think where people get lost is one of the biggest frustrations I have today with software vendors and software companies is they all do the same thing. And what I mean about that is you've got a couple companies that you do document storage with, for example, and they want to have a meeting and they want to talk about, oh, we got this other contract management thing where you can sign your contract with us. And everybody, it's like a Venn diagram of all the software companies out there, really overlap. And I think that gets people really confused because there's 15 different sales hooks that they can drop that you might bite on when they really only have a core competency for one or two things. And getting to like, how do you find a simple solution? I think it resides in just having more of a core stack that's as native as possible. And that just try and hit that 80% with what you have and really go from there. Because if you're focusing on the 20% or trying to get 100% of that silver bullet, you're never going to get there. And you're basically chasing rainbows. And that's when it becomes susceptible to, we can do this one thing that you really need. And so somebody goes out and buys it. And then all of a sudden it's 60% of what that does. We have two other applications that do the same thing. And then you've got two different areas of your organization that are not doing something in the same way. And then your data gets all messed up eventually. So it's simple model, which is your technology stack, and utilizing that, and then having a very clear procurement process for when you're going to bring something in. How is it going to fit? How are we going to use it? How are we going to know it's going to be successful? How do we know that we want to pull the plug on it? Make sure you're getting all that stuff laid out very clearly in the beginning. And if you have that, then it's much easier to try and add something.
I just recently interviewed a chief security officer, that was adding to his tech stack. And he said, we looked at 14 different partners. And he said, they all said they could do everything we had in our requirements. There wasn't one of them that said, hey, we could do these 8, these 2 over here, we're not really that good at. So to your point, it was like a sameness. And he said, here's what I really wanted to know. He said, I want to know 2 things. One, I wanted to know that the technology performed. But secondly, I want to know what it's like working with them after I sign the contract. What's that experience of working with them like? How dedicated are they? That relationship, their ability to get in, dig in and troubleshoot and find the solutions and go even beyond. He said that their particular area of expertise, but when I plug them in, if there's other issues or there's other things that are going on, how can they help me solve these problems? How are they a true partner in my success? Is that a good way to articulate what you're talking about here in terms of defining that partner in what you want out of them?
I think that's how you're going to be successful. If you're in it together, it's a win situation. So that's one of the things that you're trying to ascertain through an RFP or through interviewing potential partners. Is that what they're looking at? Are they asking questions about your business that aren't just overtly them trying to size the contract and the opportunity? We're a mission-based company. It's important for us that we work with people that believe in our mission. And if I'm not hearing that kind of line of questioning, what is it that you do? How is it that we can help you? I don't want to wait for those conversations until we've agreed terms. Those are, like, to me, eye signs where I think we're going to have a good relationship. And I think it's a partner that's going to want to grow with us through those challenges that we find ourselves having.
I want to transition a little bit because I think you've articulated that really well. And I want to go into an area of where the industry seems to be trending, the network infrastructure industry. And there's a lot of talk about investments into wireless, in 5G, and failover systems and bringing a number of different IP addresses or the pipeline. We have to have connected lines. We have to have wireless lines. We have to have now satellite lines. And like, how do you think about this trend? What is it doing for that secure, resilient network and where it's heading?
I think the resiliency is the obvious bit. So if you have a failure and you've got a backup there, that's going to be there for you. From security, obviously, clearly in the short term, that's the scariest part of it, because at least personally, I don't really feel that it's being addressed, and not because it's laziness. It's just, how do you address it? Because the prevalence of AI and now generative AI attacks, and I just read something this morning about the next wave of agify or something AI as well, where it seems like it always does. The nefarious hackers are one step ahead, because if you're trying to protect yourself, you're not sure where it's going to go. You're just always in a reactive mode, and the tools are becoming more sophisticated. So playing catch up is harder. So I don't really have a good answer when it comes to the security part, other than I think it's easy not to invest in education for your staff and all your employees. We do a lot of, to a point where it's almost comical. It comes up, and by that, I mean that we joke about it at all company meetings or even side meetings. Like, oh, I wanted to make sure this wasn't another phishing test, that type of thing, by giving a stray from what you asked. But I think it's just vigilance and that type of thing from a security standpoint.
Let me ask you another question that's pointed, because there's a term going around the industry now, wireless first, in terms of this network resilience, connectivity, everything. And first off, I want to know, like, just a scale of 1 to 10, a wireless first trend in our networks. How important is that to our very business operations, distributed employee workforce, our clients, multi-location outlets that we've got to support? 1, wireless first, that's not important at all. 10, it's actually vital to where we're going in our long-term growth and in how we support our business.
Yeah, I think for us, it's probably a 10. We're, as I've mentioned, 100% virtual. I know just from our employee perspective, you're either at home, and most people have wireless at home. Not many people are running internet, coaxial, whatever, to their workstations anymore. We have a nationwide affiliates. Homes for Heroes is providing rebates to heroes that are purchasing or refinancing a home. And so our affiliate real estate specialists are typically on the road at a closing, at a showing. They're going to be on their phone. They're going to need that wireless situation to be looking at information that we're sharing with them on whomever the hero is that they're trying to find a home for, to them giving us information on what they're learning in real time, to they've got an hour between meetings. And so they're trying to update their marketing materials with some of the things that we're providing them as well. And they're not going to go back to their office, and they're going to want to do that from their iPad or from their phone or that type of thing. Yeah, I think we're 9 or 10, definitely on that scale.
So what I'm hearing is that whether it's your own employees or the network that you work with, the experience that you're delivering is on a wireless. It's paramount importance. And so therefore, having a number of wireless inputs, connections that a failover, nobody even hears a blip or sees a blip in the system. It just works perfectly. In fact, there was a study that was done by McKinsey and Company, and they looked at over 400 highly profitable companies, B2C and B2B, and they said that the number one differentiator in those businesses was CX, customer experience. And what I'm taking away is you're delivering that customer experience over a wireless connection. So it makes it ultimate importance. I would love to ask you one last question. And that question is, because we've talked about a lot, if there was one thing that you wanted the audience to take away about how you're creating this experience, you're creating this resilient network, and what you want them to take away from this podcast, what would that be?
I think don't be afraid to take a look at everything you have and ask yourself, how can I get away with half of it or a third of it? Then with what you're left, how's that going to free you? How's that going to accelerate where you want to go? It's simplify what you have. Do a mental intellectual exercise by looking at everything in your tech horizon and say, okay, I'm going to challenge myself to get rid of a third of it. What's the impact going to be on my business in the short term? Is it going to be 80% or is it going to be 20%? If you still have 80% of what you need to do day to day, and you've limited your complexity by a half or by 2/3, then just imagine what you can do to attack that 20%, that incremental gain. That's always so difficult. So it's challenging yourself to try and get smaller and try and work with fewer things and just free yourself from the confusion of the marketplace with all these different vendors that are hitting you from all angles and going around to your business partners and telling them that they got the secret sauce for them. It's that type of thing. So it's more than one thing.
Jim, I know one thing. People are going to probably have questions after watching this. Is it appropriate that we would give out maybe a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out and ask you questions?
Sure. No problem. Absolutely.
Thank you. This is an important conversation because the one thing that we do know is that the complexity never ends. So eroding at that simplicity is a big part of our jobs. And so I love that you came on and you could just openly talk about how you think about it and share that with your peers in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.